Yep. Looks like that'll work.
So I think then we're ready if that's running. And then Ruben, if you need to make me co-host again, you should probably stay host since you're set up for that. But
yeah. All right. So Kevin, does that allow you to let people in? Yeah, okay.
yep, we have let everybody in the waiting room in now.
So Audrey, you can begin.
Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:06 p.m. Welcome to the Monday, September 24th, 2020 City of Burlingame Planning Commission meeting. For all in attendance today, please note that this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be uploaded to the city's website after the meeting. As a courtesy during the proceedings, we ask that you place yourselves on mute, as sound transfers easily and can be disruptive. Please note that there are several ways for you to submit comments during this meeting. First, you may send your comments by email to publiccomment@burlingame.org. Staff will be monitoring emails submitted during the meeting, which will be read at the appropriate time. The length of the emailed comment should be commensurate with the 3 minutes customarily allowed for verbal comments. You may also submit your comment using chat in Zoom by clicking on the chat button at the bottom of your screen. Staff will then read the comment at the appropriate time. Lastly, you may raise your hand in Zoom by clicking on the participant button, also located at the bottom of your screen, and then click Raise Hand. Members of the public who are participating in the Zoom meeting by phone can dial *9 to raise a hand. So we're moving on to agenda item number 2, roll call. The record should note that 7 members of our commissioners are present this evening. And now on to agenda item number 3, approval of minutes. We have revised meeting minutes to review and approve from the August 24th regular Planning Commission meeting. Are there any comments or changes or discussions regarding the revised August 24th minutes? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion, or I will move that we approve the minutes from the August 24th meeting. And can I have a second, please?
I'll second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion by myself, Commissioner Say, seconded by Commissioner Camarado. Is there any discussion on the motion for approval of these minutes? Seeing none, can we have a verbal vote, please?
Okay. Verbal or roll call?
Roll call, please.
Sorry.
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Terrones,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 7-0-0-0. Now we'll
Hello.
move.
So this is Commissioner Loftus. I wasn't asked. So did you want me to vote?
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. Commissioner Loftus.
No worries. Aye.
Thank you. Now we have a motion that's passed to 7-0-0-0. Moving on now to agenda item number 4, approval of agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
There are no changes from staff.
Okay, thank you. And then we'll proceed with the approved agenda then. Moving on to agenda item number 5, public comments, non-agenda items. Members of the public may speak about any item not on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to submit an item for a future Planning Commission agenda may do so during the public comment period. The Ralph Brown Act, which is the state local agency open meeting law, prohibits the Planning Commission from acting on any matter that is not on the agenda. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes each. A timer will sound at the end of the time, and I may adjust the time limit in light of the number of anticipated speakers. Please speak clearly into the microphone. Do we have any members of the public who wish to speak on any item that is not on our agenda this evening? Do we have any raised hands or emails?
There are no emails and no chats under public comment.
All right, then, seeing none, we will then move on to the next item, which is agenda item number 6, study items. So we have this evening, item 6A, 1341 Marston Road. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? I will note that I spoke with, met with the applicant and Mr. Berryman, and was able to speak with him about his project and take a look at the general premises from the exterior. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. Can we have a staff report, please?
Sure. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit and parking variance to operate a youth athletic program, which we consider to be a commercial recreation use at 1341 Marston Road, zoned RR. The existing building consists of 2 tenant spaces. The applicant currently operates an auto repair shop in the adjacent tenant space at 1343 Marston Road. The tenant space next door at 1341 Marston Road was previously occupied by an auto repair business. The applicant notes that the proposed youth athletic program would offer 1-hour training sessions and would accommodate 4 to 8 clients at a time. The applicant would be the only staff member or trainer on site. The parking demand for the previous auto repair use at 1341 Marston Road and the current auto repair business at 1343 Marston Road is 8 parking spaces. The parking demand for the proposed commercial recreation use and the existing auto repair business is 10 parking spaces. Therefore, there's a difference of 2 parking spaces. There are currently 8 spaces on the site, and 1 parking space is being added within the auto repair business at 1343 Marston Road, therefore providing a total of 9 parking spaces. As a result, the applicant is requesting a parking variance for 1 parking space, in addition to the conditional use permit. So that concludes my staff report. If you have any questions for staff, I'd be happy to take those. Otherwise, the applicant is here. This is a study item, so you can ask questions of the applicant. And then you would make a motion to bring this back on regular action or on consent, depending on the discussion.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Would the applicant please step forward and state your name and anything else you would like to add about your project? Is the applicant present? Mr. Berryman, you're on mute.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, we can hear you now.
So my name is Adnan Berryman, owner of Adnan's Automotive, which is pretty much adjacent to them. Starting this is more of kind of a side note business for me. That's why I'm really the only trainee and limited time of what I can spend over there. It's just more once I finish shop, then I go over there. And the idea is to train for 3 hours a day roughly 3 classes a day is what I'm trying to get in. And then basically on Saturday, probably in the morning, the automotive shop is closed, and then I'd be training maybe 4 classes that day. So that's pretty much what I have in plan for that facility. It's not really a in or out business where you can just come in and train. It's more scheduled based on appointment only to go in there. So I have to be available, and then the people have to be pre-signed up to be for that day. So you kind of have a schedule of who's coming in, whatnot. It's not just drop off and work out type of deal.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Taronis?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Berriman, question in regards to the drawings, because I want to try to understand the scope here. Did you prepare the drawings, or was it Mr. Wong, the civil engineer, whose stamp is on the drawing?
So I prepared them. He went over everything, and then he authorized and signed off on them.
Okay, I'm a little, if not concerned, at least confused at this point. Just a couple of questions. I wasn't able to access the interior. And please understand, I'm not trying to be picky in terms of the drawing. I want to understand the scope, because some of the dimensions don't seem to make sense. Some of the dimensions, they don't appear to be to scale. One question, are the 2 bathrooms that are indicated, are those existing or are those new?
Everything's existing.
Okay, have you talked to the building department about those bathrooms? Because if they're actually drawn to scale, then they're
Yep,
going
no,
to.
so I talked to Rick,
Okay,
and so we kind of went over everything.
okay,
So going through, after leaving this, we were gonna have to have one of those bathrooms brought up to handicap compliant.
okay,
And so because it does not have the door width, basically both doors are too small, but he says I only need to bring one up
okay,
to par, and stuff like that. So he said, everything that his comments initially, he said, just put down saying, spoke to Rick, Carl, and will be addressed at the time a building permit needs to be issued. And
okay,
so at that point, then he says, we'll have to have you bring in drawings at that time and then go through it. So this is the continuation, he said, will need to be done. So
Okay.
once he can see all that, then, you can actually start redoing the bathroom and doing all that once he approved that, engineering of that.
okay. Then, the reason I'm asking that is, I'm not trying to stick our nose into a building permit for you, but I just want to make sure that what we're approving is generally going to work for you, because if those bathrooms have to get larger, you're confident that the resulting then training area is still going to work for what you're proposing?
Yes, because so basically, if you can see where the office is,
Yeah,
so how they share that wall for the both bathrooms.
yeah,
So because those are not load bearing walls.
okay,
Everything is basically got attic space above it. So he said, just basically, if you cut that bathroom in half, you can see where the wall would and extend out another 2 feet, make a bigger door, basically where the wall is that you're adding,
Mhm.
putting in the approved size door, which would then have to be accessed through the office. But once again, that is basically having it on the premise that at least I have an option for someone if they came in to be able to go in.
Okay, then my only caution would be, it's for an accessible, even if it's just a single unisex accessible toilet room, understand that it's not just the door, it's also required clearances with fixtures. A typical accessible unisex stall is usually about an 8-foot square. So anyway, just keep that in mind as you move forward. My other questions are in regards, if you could just talk me through programmatically how this is going to work. In other words, if you could describe in a little bit more detail the variance application. We have to make the findings for extraordinary circumstances that you're facing. So that's one question. The other would be if you could talk through how the operations that are related to the variance, how the operations of the auto facility on the right-hand side are going to overlap with your training, because one of the issues is going to be the parking.
So my understanding is because, I am one spot short, right?
Right.
So in that sense, Adna's Automotive is only required to have actually 3 spots, right? So as far as that, the rest is pretty much, either used or, given. So one, this is supposed to be kind of a drop off and go. Parents aren't supposed to stay there and hang out while this is going on. And then the fact that I'm supposed to be closing down my operation on the automotive side, because I only have one other technician with me. So it's just me and one other guy. So the whole plan is to have everything, build out, ready to go. So if they are picking up, they're picking up between, 3:30 and 6:30 when I'm over at the training facility. Ideally to be picked up before, but obviously there could be crossover times of that. As far as the, variance, I was under this, if I was either missing all 7 spots or missing 1 spot, I still needed a variance, correct?
Yeah.
So, coming up 1 spot short, I assumed it wasn't going to be that big of a deal to apply for a variance, knowing that, but obviously I'm trying to do everything I can. And then the other thing is that, the class sizes, depending on what age group it is, and stuff, they get smaller. So as it starts off, 7 to 12, you can go up to 8 kids per class, but more likely, it's going to be in the range of, 4 to 6, stuff like that. And then especially now because of COVID and all that, my franchise won't even let me train regardless more than 4 kids at a time. So,
Okay.
Just from that standpoint, going forward, hypothetically supposed to be mostly dropped off. I don't want people waiting around anyways, but
Okay.
I understand it's part of the rules of having parking going along with the business.
Right. Okay. So then my last question, just in regards to the sort of overlap or interface between the proposed training facility and the existing automotive, you have 1 car that's proposed for parking for Adna's Auto that's interior to that garage, which, looks like will end up being right in front of the adjacent office. So talk me through how, give me some confidence or something, an understanding of how that car that's parked there is going to provide an additional stall of parking, to get to the count that we're being asked to consider.
So because that's almost considered my driveway area, right? Car can always be moved out, repositioned, put back if need be, right?
Okay.
That's dead space inside my shop, right? Like where the racks are, they're farther enough from the wall that basically that's dead space from in that area where you drive in, because I only have 1 entrance and 1 exit, right?
Okay.
So no matter what, if I park a car there, to get a car out, I'd have to park it out, bring it out into the street, whatever, double park, bring another car in, leave it there, or vice versa.
Okay, so then that causes me then to ask one last question. Sorry. In
Yeah,
visiting
sure.
the site this afternoon, the lot was essentially full. There were 8 cars in there. They weren't all parked in the stalls. It looked like some of them were related to the automotive operation, maybe waiting to get serviced. Is there some scenario that perhaps you could commit to in which any cars related to the auto body when the training facility is in operation, those would be pulled into the garage or something of that sort? Or
Well, yeah, a lot of it is more in the sense of just having people pick up.
Mhm.
So a lot of it, getting cars cleared out, stuff like that. I'm not in a rush to do any of that right now. So
Okay.
but yes, I would commit to basically saying, I would keep the lot clear and not let people leave it there for 5 days and not pick up more readily when they need to kind of keep, parking at the minimum and keep spots available.
Mhm.
But that would also kind of be during the hours of operation, right? So up to 3:30, I would probably be able to commit that. But after, or for 3:30 and on, I'd be able to commit that. But prior to that, I would probably want to use the lot for the automotive side.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for talking me through that.
Yep. No worries. Thank you.
Commissioner Loftus? Commissioner Loftus, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, the space button doesn't always unmute me. So I would have expected to see an accessible parking space here. Is there something that relieves you of that responsibility? from 1 to 25 spaces, there has to be one accessible space, and it's got to be the shortest it's got to be the shortest route to the entry. And that changes everything here. So
Well, sorry,
walk
when
me through that.
you say accessible space,
Yeah.
you talking about so like for size of a handicap parking spot, or?
Yeah, you're required, I would have thought you're required to provide every parking lot I've ever laid out requires an accessible space, and the number of accessible spaces you need is determined by the number of spaces total. So I don't know how that works. I don't know why there wouldn't be one here.
So the parking spots that are closest to the building are actually, I believe, what, an additional almost 3 feet, is it? Or not 3 feet? No, they're different as far as that, right? I mean, they're a little bit bigger on the ends versus.
Well, but they
closer
can't
to
be
the
just a
building?
little bit bigger. They have to meet the requirements of an accessible space.
Okay.
And you have to have a path that gets you to the door, and it's got to be free and clear, and it's got to be striped. So unless I'm mistaken about that, this doesn't work.
Okay, so when you're parked across or next to the building, how is that not accessible to the front door that's right there?
Well, you need to look at the building code. I don't think that's our business to get into that tonight.
Well, no, but so Rick Caro, what he told me is that as long as as long as the path of travel of the exit route of the building, which you see it's straight, you can basically go under the heading of the building. That's not in the path of travel where the car backs up from.
Well,
so that's what he was telling me.
So, but the requirements are very, very specific, and you can look them up in the building code. They're extremely specific. There's a certain clearance requirement. There's a striping requirement. No cars can travel over that space except under really extenuating circumstances. So I don't see how you're going to make that work. Not increase the number of spaces. In fact, I think you're going to lose a space once you've done that.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Is a parking variance?
Excuse me, through the chair, what we can have is the applicant can check on this with the building division. And when this comes back for action, we can have more information on this subject. And if something needs to be restriped to comply with disabled accessible requirements, then we'll make sure that the plans show that before it comes back to you.
Thank you. Commissioner Loftus, do you have any other questions?
No, that was it. I just didn't understand how it worked.
As far as I just have one question. So I don't know if I'm misunderstanding this. Is a parking variance for one or for all parking? Like, as if I didn't have any parking, is it still applying for the same variance? Or is it based on if I'm only missing one, it's a certain variance and not the other? I'm sorry, I'm confused about that.
Correct. Yeah. So the requested parking variance at this time is just for one parking space because you're one parking space short.
Okay, so I thought it just went automatically towards either all or nothing. I didn't know there's a specific amount that it was actually had to be going after. Sorry, I didn't understand that.
I think, Mr. Berryman, I think what Commissioner Loftus's point is that according to the building codes, there should be a required ADA compliant handicap parking space in your lot, which is a certain dimension that's much wider than a typical parking space. And that is where you may lose another parking space if you have to create an ADA compliant space, which further affects your parking variance. So I think that's the point he's trying to make. So I know you'll probably work with staff and with the building department to try to assess this issue for your next submission or next time we see this project again. So moving on to, is that okay? Do you understand that?
Yeah, I'm kind of confused because I was not explained in the beginning that I would be applying for one versus all, because I would have applied for no parking situation in that sense. I mean, would that have made a difference? Because I was never given that option at that time.
No, according to the usage of your application, you have a parking requirement, which is one greater than what you are providing on your site. And in addition to that, the requirement potentially of a handicap space, which will take up more space than you have available, may reduce your parking spaces by another one. So you may have a parking variance for 2 spaces is what Commissioner Loftus is trying to say. So, but I think you just need to go back to looking into further details and address this for your next submission so that we can continue on. It looks like there's some more questions for you. So if it's okay, I'm going to move on to another commissioner's questions.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Schmidt?
It's not so much a question as a piece of advice on this. The parking lot actually doesn't look very level. So even if you were to convert one of those spaces to a handicap accessible space, you'd have cross flow problems too. So it's going to take a bit more investigation, and you will get caught for somebody suing for accessibility.
Thank you. I will just add as well a comment, not a question, but a comment that as a mother who has spent years driving my kids around to activities, I typically will stay for any drop off that's an hour and a half or less. And looking at the description of, I think most of your appointments are 1 hour long, and you have a very large waiting room in your space. I don't see how you could discourage parents from parking their car and coming in and waiting that hour, or maybe even seeing what their child is undergoing with their training. So something for you to keep in mind as well, that you may not be able to keep all those parents from parking their car and coming in and waiting in the waiting room for that 1 hour.
Can I just, so leading into this, the planning department had told me and gave me an example of the yoga studio that's on California Drive. There's not one parking spot available for that unit at all, right? Like that's what she was using, and she gave me the whole planning layout, like this is how they applied for their permit and this is how they got it and everything. So this is just kind of what I'm relaying it to when I'm asking these questions, because they don't have even one spot parking, and so they had to apply for a variance for that. So that's kind of where I was kind of confused when these are talking about these type of restrictions, when people were able to get away with it without having any parking at all.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Mr. Berryman, we can't speak to other properties and how other businesses are run. We're speaking only in terms of your project and the limitations that may be occurring here with your parking requirements. So I just think that you need to speak to staff and get some further clarifications, and also work with the building department. Are there any other questions from commissioners? Okay, if not, I'd like to ask if there's anybody in the public who would like to speak about this project. Do we have any emails or texts, chats?
From staff, there are no emails and no chats.
Okay, with that, then I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, Commissioner Torres, did you want to ask something before I close?
No, I'm sorry. I was just going to make.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Torres, would you like to speak?
Okay, yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, I want to say to the applicant, I want to find a way to support an application like this. Just generally speaking and philosophically, the effort to try to help and train kids and help them with their baseball skills or whatever training skills that you're offering. I'm all for that. I'd like to try to find a way to make this work. But what I have to say is I think what the project needs, it needs some professional knowledge and skill and from a design standpoint. Mr. Wong, if he's involved in this and has overstamped these plans, that makes me a little bit nervous for him, because the plan's not being to scale and some of the things not figured out, they're going to complicate this application. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's complicated beyond the point of potential approval, but some of these issues have to get worked out and can't wait until a building permit. We have to know what kind of variance we're being asked to consider. And, the way it simply reads to me is there are currently the 10 stalls, or not, excuse me, 9 stalls that are being provided, but the application with the intensification of use requires one more stall. So it's a simple variance application for that additional stall. If that one stall turns into two stalls because of the layout that has to occur to meet not just an accessible stall, and understand that an accessible stall also includes the adjacent drive aisle that we've all seen when we go through a typical parking lot, then that's going to affect this application. And we have to know what that includes, again, before this goes to the building permit. So this needs either the civil engineer or somebody who can do a more accurate layout to get involved before this can come back to us for action. What I would also say to the applicant is if they've looked and been directed to review other applications similar to this, then you should take a close look at the variance application. And if that variance application has some exceptional or extraordinary circumstances that we were being asked to consider, and we therefore approved, they weren't, quote, getting away with something. They were simply being approved for something that was approvable because we could make the findings. What we have before us right now in the variance application does not identify exceptional or extraordinary circumstances, either that are particular to this project. Meaning we could consider something relative to the users, in other words, youth that aren't going to drive, but then we have to be convinced that the people that drive them, as Commissioner Say was explaining, aren't going to stay and create more parking issues. The reason I say all of that is because in visiting the site today, the adjacent parking on the street was really impacted. There was maybe one place that I could find a parking space some distance from this location out on the street. So the people dropping off are going to rely or want to rely on the parking area. So I think those things need to get figured out before this thing could come back before us for action. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? All right. So I'd like to move that we continue this project.
It'll actually come back to regular action.
Yeah, regular action, sorry. We're not even on regular action yet. So yes, we'll bring it to regular action first.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion by myself, Commissioner Say, seconded by Commissioner Taronis. Do you have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Taronis,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 7-0-0-0. Moving on to agenda item number 7, consent calendar. We do not have any consent calendar items this evening. So we will move on to agenda item number 8, regular action items. Item 8A, we have 1515 Willow Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Looks like we're all good. Let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for a fence exception for fence height at 1515 Willow Avenue, zoned R1. The subject property is an interior lot that borders a duplex on the left side. This neighboring lot has an open backyard with clear visibility from the subject property to the nearby 3-story apartment building at 789 El Camino Real. The applicant is requesting a fence exception to allow a proposed 8-foot tall fence along the left side property in the rear half of the lot. In the R1 district, the maximum allowed fence height along the side and rear property lines is 7 feet, provided that the last foot of height is of an open design, freely allowing air and light to pass through. The applicant is proposing to maintain the existing 6-foot redwood fence and to add 2 foot of opaque white polycarbonate panel on top for a total of fence height of 8 feet. And this is to help provide additional privacy into their rear yard. This concludes my summary of the staff report. I'm here for questions for staff. If not, I believe the applicant is available to answer your questions.
Thank you. Do we have any, yes, questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, Ruben, I'm just wondering about the nature of this application. Was this from a complaint, or did they just walk in with an application?
Right, this is an application that was submitted to the planning division for a fence exception. And that's because it's essentially an 8-foot solid fence where we allow 6-foot solid plus 1 foot of lattice. So they're wanting to go solid material up to 8 feet, and that requires a fence exception.
Okay, no, I understand that. I'm just wondering because it's already been built.
Yeah,
But-
no, I believe this was not a result of a complaint.
Okay, thank you.
This is something that they brought forward themselves.
Right. So looks like we don't have any further questions. I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please step forward and state your name and anything else you'd like to add about your project?
My name is Mika Hamamura. I'm the contractor helping, I believe the homeowners also at the hearing. Jamie,
Yes, I'm here.
I can't see him, but
Yeah,
basically produced to help with the privacy and security from the second and third stories of the building all along the west face of the house. The Google
Should turn it off.
the Google satellite shot doesn't show that there's that area, there's an addition that goes all the way back to where the black shaded portion is. And that's the portion that includes the large kitchen window, a breakfast nook window, and the dining room window. And that's basically what we're seeking for privacy and security reasons. It's otherwise pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, so did you consider any other options like landscaping perhaps?
There's there's only a 4-foot space between the exterior wall and the existing fence. And the idea was not to block out access to blue sky from all 4 windows, and I think the egress on that side of the house will be a little bit dangerous to have things grown up, just in case the firefighters or whatever have to pass through, coming and going, because it's about 30 feet of fence that needs to be given privacy from. So it seemed like quite a tight space to try to put landscaping in.
Okay, and then at the rear of the property, in that rear corner on that same side, there's some kind of a steel I-beam structure with a metal roof on it. Was any of that permitted?
The patio cover was not, no.
Okay.
So the patio cover is also being dealt with as a separate issue with a redesign of the backyard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? I wanted to follow on Commissioner Gall's earlier question. Is what you are asking permission for already built, or is it an extension of a condition you already have at your left fence?
It's already built.
Okay. Thank you. All right, seeing that the commissioners don't have any other further questions, is anyone from the public interested in speaking on this project? Do we have any emails?
We have no emails and there are no chats submitted for this project.
Okay, then with that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, well, so I'm having some trouble with this because for a number of reasons, mainly because it really looks chopped up and out of place. The panels aren't even that are on there. And it looks at it on, and I get it that the building overlooks the house, but the building was there prior to the applicant purchasing the property. So it's not like there wasn't an existing condition. I'm also kind of disturbed by what's happening in the backyard. It just sort of seems like things are sort of getting added on. You see this happening in certain parts of San Francisco or bigger cities where you just kind of start cobbling things together. It's not helped at all by the neighbor who has the duplex between the two properties, who's constructed an 8-foot solid fence. The whole thing is starting to look, like I say, really cobbled together to me. I'm just not sure I can support this application.
Commissioner Schmidt?
For me, it's not so much the height, because I can understand the issue, being near the apartments. But I don't believe that the materials used and the construction done matches anything there. And I think it's going to get blown over. And I would agree with Commissioner Gall, it's becoming a hodgepodge of stuff. So it's not attractive. And I can't imagine that the neighbors next door appreciate it either. So I could not support this solution, although the height would be something to be discussed if it were done appropriately.
Commissioner Torrones?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Schmidt. I think that there is a compelling argument that the applicant has put forth in terms of the exceptional or extraordinary circumstances relative to the extreme adjacency of the 4-story apartment building. The fact that it has, as they've said, is it's intruding into the adjacent property that is a bit of a buffer. It's already taking a bite out of that rear yard with the parking for the apartment building. So, I think that exceptional circumstance has been identified, but it's just a matter of the solution. Unfortunately, it's a fence exception, so it's not really a design review consideration. But I do have concerns about the stability and just the details of what's been installed, the hinge points that are created. It sounds like with the contractor involved, maybe they're confident in it, but I just don't know if this is the right solution in order to address the circumstance that's been identified. So I can generally sympathize, but I'm just having a hard time with this particular solution.
Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think Commissioner Torrones is right about the fact that there's not a design review issue here. But one of the things we're being asked to consider is whether it's going to materially affect or damage neighboring properties. And if you're using a material and a solution that isn't consistent with, other fences and solutions we see in the area, then I can't make that finding. So I do completely agree that there's exceptional circumstances here in relation to the apartment building and how that's situated related to this property that could support a higher fence, but I don't think this is the solution that could get my support.
Commissioner Camerado?
I agree with my fellow commissioners. I don't have anything else to add.
Can I make I have a question
Um,
or no?
oh, we already closed the public hearing
I see.
part, but I suppose we could hear your question.
Is it, could a possible solution just be to raise the existing redwood fence in the same style and manner that exists to the 8-foot height?
I think what some of the commissioners have been saying is that that is a potential solution that may be supportable. But I think you would have to submit your drawings again.
Right. Just as far as trying to find a solution, then
Right.
that would be easy enough to resubmit, I suppose.
Mhm. All right. So, Commissioner Sargent.
I move is the public hearing closed again?
It is. Sorry.
I move we deny this project without prejudice, which will give the applicant a chance to bring it back with a different solution.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by Commissioner Loftus. Is there any discussion on this motion? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. The motion passes 7-0-0-0. Or was that too many zeros? 7-0-0-0. Do we move on to the next item? Do I have to? Yes, okay. So we now move on to.
Sorry, there
Do I need
was,
to
yeah, we do need to read the
read the appeal?
procedures. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So an action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing. It must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. So thank you. We now move on to agenda item number 8B, 624 Lexington Way. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? So let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for design review amendment for as-built changes to a previously approved first and second story addition to an existing single-family dwelling at 624 Lexington Way, zoned R1. Following the approval of the design review application and issuance of a building permit, several modifications were made to the exterior of the house, and the applicant is now requesting an amendment for their approval. The applicant provided a detailed list of the as-built changes, which is included in your staff report. The changes are architectural and do not affect the setbacks, lot coverage, FAR, or building envelope. That concludes the summary of my staff report. I'm here for questions, and the applicant is also in attendance.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to, sorry, we have one, Commissioner Loftus.
So I understand this to be, these changes are as-built changes? Do I understand that? And so that means that the siding, for example, was built with, it was approved as wood, but built entirely with hardy plank?
I believe so. We can have the applicant confirm that. I'm not that familiar with this project, but
okay,
we can have the applicant confirm that.
All right. With that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please step forward, state your name, and add any comments that you would like about your project?
Yeah, good evening. I'm Rob Waymeyer with Waymeyer Design. This was, when we started with the project, one of the big things that we got out of it with the original approval was In that particular neighborhood, the big concern across the board was massing and size. One of the things that we had requested was a special permit for the second floor with the declining height envelope, because the client really wanted a true Cape Cod design. After the approval and when the project started, we started getting into more and more of the intricate detailing of the Cape Cod. And some of the things that came up on there were some of the smaller details, and I think some of the finer details that actually help lower the scale of the house and lower the massing. And the changes that they requested are, indicative of that. To Commissioner Loftus's point, yes, the original layout for that was wood siding. They did choose to put a hardy siding in essence, allowing them to do a bunch of the other details that they had hoped to do to make it more of a traditional Cape Cod. In researching the Cape Cods extensively, having corner boards on those are extremely common, and it's in most of the ones that you see in a traditional house, that's the way they're actually built. With the additional trim that we tried to do, we tried to make a lot of the changes to the trim, adding additional header details, additional window trim details on all of the sides of the house, both on the first and second floors. Whereas originally they weren't quite laid out that way. There were some areas that were much more simple. Throughout the house, around the entire eave line, also to bring the scale of it down, instead of just a standard eave, we actually used, we designed a V rustic tongue and groove detail that wrapped all around the eaves to give it a little more definition and a little more human scale to bring it down. And what was very hard to see originally, as well as in this set of plans, is the entire porch ceiling is actually being used, I think, as the city hopes, as an outside living space. So we did the same thing in there. We kind of laid that out on that ceiling to give it that very open tongue and groove, detail on the ceiling itself. When it came to the shutters, instead of just doing the tack-on shutters that are very, readily available, the look we went with the shutters on this was actually a real operating style shutter with the operating hardware on them. Again, much more tied into what a true Cape Cod style would be. Some of the other wood details that we had done were we built up some of the columns a little bit. We installed a belly band, again, around the sides of the house to bring the scale down and not make it just feel so big. It's kind of it's a common thread in that neighborhood. Last but not least, we had originally it was approved with a wood door, and the Armstrongs have, I guess there were 2 teenage or pre-teenage sons and a daughter that all play basketball. And the damage to the door being wood would be phenomenal. And the Armstrongs requested that door be a metal door that meets the requirements of the aesthetically. At this time, the door's in place. We have to put a coat of paint on it, which will give it the same paint finish as the rest of the trim. So the fact that it is metal instead of wood will not be noticeable at all. Last but not least, there's some additional brick detailing work we did. We put more brick on the face of the garage to tie the garage and the return from the porch around. And then they also use that brick detail in additional places in the back. There's some rear patio areas that also have that brick, as well as the brick porch, the steps, and an entire brick walkway that goes out to the street. So we really did try to pay attention to a lot of the detail to make it even smaller than what was approved, a little more in scale, and to kind of keep with a true Cape Cod that you would see in the upper Northeast. That's it. If I have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything that you guys may have.
All right, are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I have a few questions, Rob. So the brick, for example, that you use, why was it not brought down the sides of the house?
Well, on the side of the one house, it is so, the setback there is so tight. It just, we'd be putting brick on it, would be covered up by the fence and the utility stuff on the side. So they chose to eliminate the brick from that area for that. It's with the fence line as close as it is and the house on both sides, you're not even going to be able to see it or enjoy the detail at all. Rather adding additional detail up above that you can see from the street and you can see from the balance of the neighborhood.
Okay, and those bricks, are those just a facing brick, like a split brick?
It's a combination of both. It's a combination of a whole brick and a split brick that we got to use. It was a little bit of both because of the weight and the structure, as well as just making sure they all fit, but they're real brick. It's just some of them are just, like you said, they're cut in half.
I'm just not used to seeing such a large face on it, because it's like it's a paving brick, you know, used on the side. I'm used to seeing the edge of the brick as it's stacked, you know, typically like that.
Well, we kind of laid it out that way, and it didn't look, it looked off. They aesthetically, they weren't happy with it. It didn't look right. So we flipped it the opposite way to give it a little more of a little less lines that we would have if it was sitting on like a regular standard course.
Yeah,
less horizontal.
So in switching from the wood siding with the mitered corners to the hardy, you also, it looks like, switched from a 6-inch siding to an 8-inch siding. Was there a reason for that?
I don't think it's, I think it was just over 6. I think it was about 6.5. I didn't think it was 8. I'd have to check.
The
I don't have an
siding
answer
on
for
there,
that one.
yeah, I measured it today. It's got an 8-inch face, and the drawings show a 6-inch.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that. I didn't realize that it was set up at 8.
Okay. And were you the contractor on this one?
We did build that, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Taronis?
Thank you. So Rob, you were the builder on this, and you just said, right?
Yes.
Okay, I gotta ask, why does this keep happening on your projects? Changes after the fact?
I don't have an answer for it. We were working through it. We were working through the details on there. We were hoping to bring the stuff in earlier. We ran into a bunch of stuff with, you know, this coming year with COVID and with everything else, and it didn't happen.
You're saying they decided this and they decided that. I assume you mean the owners.
The owner did, yes.
So they're directing you to make these changes.
Yes.
You and your familiarity with us, we're now in position again of having to approve changes after the fact. You have no response to that. There's after.
I understand that it's a change after the fact. I do. And, we did our best to be able to turn it in. We had hoped to turn it in earlier. We weren't able to do so with some of the things that popped up. And we're trying to make a point of not having these things going forward with additional changes, stuff that's changed off of there. I know the hardy board's a big deal, especially around town. In this particular case, the way we prepped it and the way we put it together, I think that the key on having the hardy panel is prepping it, installing it properly, and putting the right amount of prep work on it and the paint on it. And I think that it came out quite well as far as the finish goes. But the idea that we're trying to do, and we're trying to do internally, is to get them, all of our clients, this kind of, this is the way it has to move forward, and that's it.
So the owners who made these decisions to make these changes, were they the owners of the property when it was brought before us for design review?
Yes.
Then why did you show stone on the side of the house? The fence and the adjacent property existed then.
We should put stone on the front of the house originally. Yes, and then we put brick on instead for the front of the house.
No, but you showed it on the sides of the house as well. And now the owners are saying, or they are saying, or you are asking us to consider the fact that the adjacent house and the adjacent fence are going to block that view, so there's no need for it to have the brick down along the side of the house like you originally showed.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
right. Are there any questions from the public or comments?
There are no chats and no emails submitted for this application.
Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I just have to say I'm extremely unhappy about being put into this situation again. I can tell that's where Commissioner Tronis was headed as well. Setting aside the cementitious siding, which the City Council has already rendered its opinion on, I don't feel like arguing about that anymore. But to have built an entire house and sided it with the wrong material, an unapproved material, is frankly unconscionable. And it puts us in a really, really bad situation, puts us in an extremely difficult situation. We could ask you to remove it. Now, will we do that? I mean, we'll look like jerks, right? And I worry that that's what people count on. I have no problem with frankly, I have no problem with the design changes that have been made. What I have a problem with is being put in this situation. I don't like it. And, you know, I'm inclined to just to not agree to it for that very reason. This is not a fair thing to do to volunteer professionals who are serving the community. It's just not right. So I'm extremely unhappy about it. And I think that the design and construction professionals in this community have a responsibility for managing their clients' decisions to adhere to what is approved by appointed officials. Pure and simple.
Commissioner Tronis?
Thank you. Yeah, I have to agree with Commissioner Loftus. And Rob, I have to say that, you know, maybe this isn't appropriate, but I do have to say that I'm personally offended. And the reason I say that is because you, for one, for the record, on a prior application, were grateful for my coming out and working with you and the builder for after the fact changes to come up with some solution. And now we're seeing another situation like this. You know, and again, it's not a matter of it, whether it's, when it comes down to it, whether it's in a personal affront to me or not, or whether or not I'm offended. It's whether or not these things are, whether or not this is an acceptable process, and it's not. You know, so that said, I also have to agree with Commissioner Loftus that, you know, generally the changes are acceptable. You know, for the most part, they're not too offensive. Again, I step back and sort of step away from any sort of personal affront, and I look as to whether or not I would have approved these things in the first place. And generally, I probably would have, but I would have taken some exception from a design standpoint of stopping the brick face just at the very front and not at least turning it around some portion of the side. And it's just, in terms of a process, it's somewhat offensive to say, okay, we're going to submit this and this is what we're going to get approval on. We're going to start the construction and then we'll just, you know, ask for forgiveness later. And I'm not, you know, Rob, I'm not trying to ascribe that necessarily to you, but for this to have happened again, it's starting to look that way. So in summary, you know, I'm accepting of the changes for the most part. You know, I don't, for the record, I don't necessarily agree that the shutters just on the front and them being made better, I don't necessarily see them as true gutters unless somebody can get me up close and show that they're a hinge gutter of some sort. You know, they're not a true, excuse me, not gutter, shutter. They're not really a true shutter unless they can really cover the whole windows like a true Cape Cod. And then it's not a true Cape Cod because you go around the side and then suddenly there's no more shutters. So anyway, that said, I guess I can generally accept the design changes for the way that they've been done. I'm just dissatisfied with the process. Thanks for listening.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, so overall, I don't think, you know, it's a terrible looking house or anything like that, but I think that it's significantly changed enough from what I interpreted the original drawings to be. Starting at the base, I thought I'm looking at the stone and I'm seeing it more as a thinner stone that sort of flattens it out and gives the building that base that you're looking for, and something that that the house can stand on or sit on like a typical Cape Cod would. I don't think that the material that you use there, those paving stones, I've never seen them on a vertical face. I've only seen them on a pathway, which is where you would typically see the top of a brick, not the porous. You'd see that on a face, on the front of a house, or on a vertical face, you would see that finished edge of a brick. And again, I agree with Commissioner Toronis. I don't understand why it doesn't follow all the way around the house. Then when you move up to the siding, the 1x8 siding makes the house seem bigger to me. I mean, that was part of what I thought we had discussed previously, was that we were trying to make this appear smaller in scale, and a 1x6, which would have about a 5.5-inch exposure, would seem much more rich and much more detailed, and would go with that flatter stone on the bottom. I get it that there are corner boards on Cape Cods, but I just think that a mitered corner looks so much more finished. The other thing is, and I've said this before, that metal garage doors, that's actually a very nice looking metal garage door, but I'll tell you what, a wood garage door is going to hold up a lot better to a basketball than a metal one is, because it's going to dent. I mean, I'm as frustrated as the other commissioners are, and I hope that some of the other commissioners voice their opinions too, because this is really frustrating. And it's not just that it's happening once or twice, every other session, but it's coming. This is our third one from you just in these summer months, and I don't know what to do with this, but I don't think that it's all approvable to me.
Commissioner Camerado.
I would agree with Commissioner Toronis and Commissioner Gall. So pretty disappointed. And, I have to say that we're seeing more and more of this from a number of different people that haven't built in our community. And Rob, you've been part of this community for a long time, and you know what our kind of expectations are. That being said, I think the one thing I really think that we need to do is kind of set the tone of what we think this project, what I think is important to show. And the one thing that I really don't want to get rid of, and maybe we can look at this as a whole, is the shutters on the side elevations. That to me kind of, you've got shutters in the front and now there's no shutters on the side elevation. I think that has to be carried out throughout. And that's all I have to say.
All right, I will also add my disappointment too, and I will second what Commissioner Camerado just said about that we sometimes face this issue with builders and architects who haven't worked so much in our city and aren't really familiar with the work that we put into the design review process. And it is disappointing to see, a builder and designer who does work regularly in the area and knows how we work and our expectations. And I think the disappointment comes in that we all feel a little bit played, like, don't worry about it, do what you want to do. And then, we'll ask for forgiveness later on after everything's done. And not to say that that's the words you used or anything like that, but that's how we feel when we put so much effort into this process. And then in the end, it's a number of explanations of, trying to be true to a design style, but that actually isn't pure because it's not being carried out on all sides of the elevations of the house. We do see, back to the kind of the stone cladding or the brick cladding, oftentimes we see that there is a wraparound on the sides of the home, at least to the point where there is a fence or a gate. And that would seem like that would be an appropriate solution if you were trying to either save on costs or if the point is that you can't see it you can see the corners and the in the immediate area right past the corners as you drive by most properties. And so that might be a solution there for the brick cladding on the side elevations. And I agree that I think the shutters should be carried out across all sides of the house. So it's looking like we kind of have a hybrid of some accepted ideas that revisions that we may find agreeable, and want to see if anybody wants to say anything else or make a motion. Commissioner Sargent.
I don't think I really have anything to add to what's been said. It's been said pretty articulately. I would make a motion that we accept all of the changes proposed, except for the removal of the shutters on the sides and back of the house. And I would also ask that the brick cladding be continued on the left and right side, at least to beyond the fence line. It's hard to tell on the plan that was submitted where that would be. And I'd ask that the applicant submit an FYI to that, showing how that would be done.
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by Commissioner Toronis. Is there any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I appreciate those changes. But I'm not satisfied with the brick at the base of the house, the way it has been applied. To me, it looks very cheap. And what we had before was a house that seemed to have a lot of detail and a lot of, it just appeared less massive, I guess. It appeared more delicate. And I don't think I can support even just adding to the brick. I would rather see the brick removed and either a stone put on or a proper brick put on, as opposed to a paving stone on the vertical face.
Did you want to, is there any other comment
I don't know if
on
anybody,
this motion?
I may
or
stand
no?
alone on that. I don't know. So if anyone wants to chime in, I'm all ears.
Yes, that's what I was trying to ask, if any commissioners wanted to further discuss this particular point. Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, I actually agree with Commissioner Gall that I think that given that it's actually not a huge amount of brick that we're asking to change, that having a true side view brick go across that front and just turn the corners to the fence line or to the closure line is an appropriate solution to try and bring back some of that scale.
I will
would agree
say,
as well.
I will say, Madam Chair, as a comment on the motion, I know I was the second, but some of Commissioner Gall's points are leading me to suspect, if not conclude, at least suspect that some of the changes may have been made, for cost. There was the admission by the applicant that, they eliminated some of the bricks so that they could afford to do some of the other upgrades and changes to the trims, and it may have been a situation where they had pavers on hand, so they just used that as sort of the siding. And I know cost is a big consideration, but it's not necessarily a specific consideration that we have to make in terms of approvability. It's just a slippery slope when we start to make that a specific criteria that says, well, it's okay to do that. So, just my comments on the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner.
I guess I would, I don't know. I don't feel as strongly about the brick, so I guess I'd want more feedback from other commissioners about whether there'd be enough support to change that.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Schmidt in that the extent of the brick is not that extensive. It's basically the front facade and a little bit wrapping around the corners. So from a cost perspective, it doesn't seem like that would be, you know, a huge investment in recladding.
Well, I guess I'd object to, you know, as Commissioner Torona said about considering the cost on this, because I think, I mean, we can only concern ourselves with the aesthetic issues, and I think, you know, it's I think really, and we haven't really talked specifically about this, I mean, directly, but you know, the integrity of our process is really paramount to what we do and the trust we have in the community. And if we don't agree that what's been proposed or what's been done is aesthetically acceptable, but we're accepting it because it's done, that's basically telling every other applicant out there why play by the rules. So I guess what I'm asking is, do we think it's aesthetically better to do the bricks as a ledger brick rather than on its face as it's done? And so that's the feedback I'd like to hear from other commissioners.
Yes, I think that would be better.
Commissioner Loftus?
Agreed. There's no question. That would be better.
Okay, I'd like to modify my motion to, in addition to wrapping the bricks around the side past the fence line on both sides, that they be switched to a ledger brick rather than a face brick as it is currently.
My second still stands.
Okay, so the revised motion by Commissioner Sargent is seconded by Commissioner Torrones. Is there any further discussion on this revised motion?
The only thing I'd add to reiterate in my motion is that this come back as an FYI before changes are made.
Okay, thank you. All right, so can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado.
Commissioner Camarado, I think you're muted, possibly.
Aye. Sorry.
Commissioner Gall.
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus.
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent.
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid.
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones.
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. The motion passes 7-0-0-0. Action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. Thank you. So we move on now to item 8C, 128 Lorton Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to know any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for an amendment to design review and density bonus waivers and modifications for changes to a previously approved 19-unit residential condominium at 128 Lorton, zoned R4 incentive subarea. This project was recently approved by the Planning Commission on July 13th, which included approval of several waivers of development standards for providing affordable housing units. The waivers were related to setbacks, lot coverage, private open space and common open space, and lastly, building height. With this application, the applicant is requesting approval of an amendment to those waivers that were granted to increase the overall building height. The proposed overall building height of 59 feet 6 inches was measured to the top of the stair and elevator enclosures because they covered more than 5% of their roof area. I would point out that the maximum allowed building height with a conditional use permit in this area is 75 feet. The applicant's letter and proposed plans dated September 3rd outlines and provides details for two options which are summarized in your staff report, and I'll briefly go over those now. Option 1 is the preferred option, and option 2 is a secondary option that was also considered by the applicant. Option 1 increases the building height to 69 feet 8 inches, and again, this is to the top of the stair and elevator enclosures. Option 1 represents an overall increase of 10 feet 2 inches compared to the originally approved building height. This increase in building height does not add any more units or add a floor. It consists of changes at each floor level in height. So it consists of an additional 3 feet 6 inches of height at the ground level to accommodate clearances for vehicle lifts, utility lines, and from the residential units above, and a 24-inch post-tension concrete slab podium. An additional 1 foot 8 inches on each of the 4 floors for the increased depth of floor structure assembly to provide 10-foot ceiling heights. So those changes at each floor level increase the overall building height by 10 feet 2 inches. Option 2, which is a secondary option that's been considered by the applicant, increases the building height to 64 feet 8 inches, or an increase of 5 feet 2 inches compared to the original approval. Option 2 is similar in that there is an additional 3.5 feet added to the ground floor for the same reasons noted in option 1, but that the ceiling heights in 2 of the floors are 9 feet instead of 10 feet. And the stair elevator enclosures are also reduced by 3 feet. With this application, the applicant is also addressing a condition of approval that required the applicant to come back as an FYI to provide a materials board and window specifications to clarify which windows will be operable and to further define the detail and articulation of the northwest elevation. It's that lower wall that's adjacent to the parking garage under construction. The materials board was made available for Planning Commission to review over the weekend. The proposed building elevations and operable window exhibit clarifies which windows will be operable. And lastly, the proposed northwest elevation shows the lower level concrete wall containing cement plaster control joints for added detailing and articulation. The applicant noted that a window manufacturer has not been chosen yet, so the specifications aren't available at this time. That'll be brought back as a separate FYI item when that's available. And lastly, there were several changes and clarifications made to the exterior facades of the building, and those are shown and identified on the proposed plans. That concludes my summary of the staff report. I can take your questions now, and I believe the applicant and architect are also available to answer your questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Would the applicant please step forward, state your name, and add anything that you would like about your project? Is the applicant present? You may be muted.
Hi, Chris Grant here with Pacific Companies. I'm working with Stephanie Gildred in regards to development of her property here at 128 Lorton. And we brought this, this design revision back for consideration by the commission today because we felt it was a good change, an appropriate change in diving into the full construction drawings and involving the structural engineer, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, et cetera. It became pretty clear that the interior volumes in these units were going to be quite pinched, and especially given the nature of what these units are and will be in a condo project, it was appropriate to bring this back for consideration of the commission. So the upper floors in the residential, meaning the upper 4 floors, really do want to have something more than what was going to be about an 8'6" clear space. And so we felt like that was an appropriate request to bring that back. The parking increase in height in the parking area, the volumes rather, was primarily due to a lack of coordination between the stacking units and the structural And once everyone figured out how much space they needed in order to clear the systems, that it was pretty apparent that the only stacking product that was provided would be a challenge to fit anything larger than a small compact. So we feel like it's a good time to revise that now and get that before the commission for consideration. I would note that Stephanie is on and she's available for comment, and has brought up a point of the preference between option 1 and option 2 is certainly option 1. It would seem feasible, and you know, if the commission feels so inclined to approve option 1, that's certainly our strongly preferred option, because we feel like it gives a better balance to the building and the proportions are maintained. And they're simply elongated in such a way that it accommodates for those interior volumes. The applicant, or excuse me, the architect is also available for questions or comments. We have highlighted some of the exterior lighting that was added, as that's further clarifying details that were revised once we brought the full MEP team on board. So available for your questions or comments or any insight you'd like to provide.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Toronis?
Thank you. So in looking at option 2, why is it that 9 feet works at the 2 lower floors of residential, 9-foot ceilings work there, but don't work at the upper 2 floors?
It's really a middle ground compromise in looking at the interior volumes. If you have a 9-foot top of floor, imagine a carpet or tile top of floor through the bottom of the drywall on the ceiling by the time you layer all that up on the ceiling. And then you add ductwork and mechanical drops. You're talking about 9 foot in some spaces, and then some of it will also be less than that in the 8-foot range. And so it's option 2 is really not a great option, to be honest. We were concerned about the difference between what was approved and what was what we're proposing for option 1, and we thought that it would warrant consideration and evaluation of what that might look like as a 9-foot option versus the 10-foot option. But in practice, the space and the volumes here on these units on a 10-foot will still be somewhat less than 10, given that you have mechanical and HVAC drops, etc.
But in typical residential, multi-unit construction like this, you plan those utilities to occur in certain areas, like bathrooms and closet spaces, et cetera, to where even a 7.5-foot or 8-foot ceiling is perfectly acceptable. And sorry, that's a comment. That's not a question.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
Am I on, Chris? Can they hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I really feel with what's going on next door to me that I would really like to see, since it is high density, I think 10-foot ceilings make any kind of apartment or house look much more spacious. And I just don't understand why there would be a problem with number 1. I didn't.
The issue is the overall height. I mean,
pardon?
The issue is the overall height, how much taller the building has to get.
Well, it's not that much when you consider I've got a 5-story parking lot next to me. It's not that much over what the top floor of that parking lot is.
This is Lance here. I may be able to add some of this. I'm the architect on the project. One of the things we wanted to make sure that we were clear on was the proportionality of the raise in height, so it did not appear out of balance with the streetscape, nor with the adjacent 5-story garage that was there.
Well, that's another one of my questions is, along with part of raising that first floor on the garage, if you look at that front elevation, you're also raising that awning, which previously was providing some good human scale, is now up at the top of transoms that are above the taller windows on that front elevation, correct? Is there any? So to make that a question, is there any reason why that awning couldn't be down at a height above those doors and then have transoms above the awning? Crickets.
Can the applicant please answer the question?
From my perspective, I think that's an appropriate request. I think it's not completely unreasonable to bring that, especially on that ground floor, to bring the scale back down of that architectural feature. That's not unrealistic, unreasonable.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Would anybody in the public like to speak on this item? Oh, before we do that, Commissioner Gall, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I just had one question. In raising I get it with the stackers raising the height of the first floor, but did you consider just recessing the building into the ground 4 feet to accommodate those stackers?
One of the challenges with this structure is that if we get too deep into the ground, then it becomes the impact on the surrounding lots, and we're seeing that in even this design that we're considering or have considered, or it's not completely resolved how to treat those stackers, the deeper it goes, the more cost prohibitive and the more logistically difficult it becomes to design it. Shoring agreements with neighboring properties becomes really quite the challenge. And so I like your idea of going below grade, or at least below curb height. 4 feet would be tough. I think it'd be a stretch to go 4 feet. Something like an 18 inches, maybe 24 inches would be really the extent of where that might be. Just
because your foundation is going to have to go down a considerable amount too with a 5-story building. But I mean, I think it would be worth looking at. It would save some of this height that we're seeing, in this new building. So I would encourage you to look at that.
All right, thank you. Would anyone from the public like to speak on this item? Do we have any emails?
No emails to public comments and no chats on this application.
Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I think I'm going the same direction as it sounds like the other commissioners who spoke on this. I think, our initial concern with this project was that it was asking for so many concessions that whether it was really an appropriate project for this lot and this location. But I think what they ended up with, as it was approved, was a really nice human scale building that was really going to look good in this neighborhood. And I think it, which allowed me to move past those concessions and vote for approval. And I think the thing that I had the most discomfort with was the waiving the setback requirements on the upper floors on the right side. And I think when you raise this building up more, I think it makes those impacts particularly on that right side building much more significant. And I think it also, it hurts the design by losing that human scale that was so good in the first design, or in the approved design. And I think you can see it in the renderings with the use of the the human characters on each of the elevations. And so I think I would be uncomfortable with I can't see either option right now as they stand as something I could support. And I think that I think option 2 is closer, but I think the upper floor height, ceiling heights are going to need to be revisited. and I would also encourage them the applicant to look at perhaps lowering the elevation of the garage slab, as Commissioner Gall had suggested, as well as looking at changing the awning in the front, as Commissioner Toronis has suggested, because I really think that the human scale, as I said, the human scale, particularly at the ground floor, was a really appealing aspect of this building. And I'm concerned that, yeah, there's a garage on the left side, but there's also the rest of the block is older stock buildings. And yeah, they may be redeveloped eventually, but if this is going to become the standard for that entire block, then it's kind of like, what's the point to the zoning code, I guess, would be where I come down on this.
Commissioner Toronis?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Sargent. What we were being asked to consider before were, special considerations and waivers and concessions relative to what it would take to get the affordable units included in the project. However, I don't see increasing the ceiling. I see the increase to the ceiling height as simply a marketing issue, and that's not one of the criteria that we have to consider relative to the special permits for height and the concessions and waivers. If that's what's necessary, I find myself realizing that if that's what's necessary to make this project work, then it's just further indication that this may be too much for this particular lot relative to all the concessions that we're being asked to consider. So, for me, I think that there's an option 3, perhaps. In other words, I can understand and accept from a technical standpoint, making the garage floor taller, in order to get the stackers in and to get the utilities. I can see how that could come into play. Again, I would ask that, as Commissioner Sargent said, and as I asked about before, that some revisiting of the awning and the human scale elements, be redesigned and reconsidered in that option. But the upper floors can remain with 9-foot ceilings and be acceptable. We have units all over town that have 9-foot ceilings in them, and they seem to be occupied. So I don't see how that becomes a necessity to make the project work from our standpoint. Thanks.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, I'd actually like to say thank you to the architect for some of the additional detailing and reveals and things shown in option 1, because that actually is helping with some of the elevations that I thought were a little weak in the previous submittal. So thank you. I'm, looking at the elevations for both option 1 and 2, I find that option 1 actually even significantly outscales the parking garage next door. Even though, it is a 5-story parking garage, it outscales it, particularly on that side, given the tower is so far away. So I think option 2 looks a lot closer to scale. And I can appreciate the need for the additional space. The stackers and everything, it's complicated. I get it. But I don't know that I could support the height in option 1 being so far out of scale, even with the parking garage. And then 2, it's just going to tower over its neighbor for quite a while. So again, thank you for the additional detail and the materials. That was helpful. But I think option 2 is the better of the 2. And I agree with the human scale comments made earlier relative to the awning in front. Thank you.
Commissioner Loftus?
I agree totally with everything that the last 3 commissioners have said, so I won't reiterate those points. I have one additional concern, and that is the materials board. I'm very uneasy about the stone that's being proposed. The stone, frankly, looked very cheap to me. It looked like glue on stone, and it would look cheap on a small surface, but I think it will look extremely cheap on a very large surface. And these are really big stone surfaces. So I'm not really buying the stone. I don't think that's the right scale or application of stone for those surfaces personally.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I can't support increasing the height. I think that with 5 bonuses already granted, I mean, including lot coverage and front, right, and left side and rear setbacks, I mean, on all 4 sides, you know, open space modifications. I think there's a way to make it work with the envelope you've got, and whether it's the ceiling heights or going underground, I think that's something that you can work out to make the project move forward. But I can't see increasing the height.
All right, and I also agree with what my fellow commissioners have stated, so won't repeat what has already been said, but to add to the human scale comments, I've been commenting all along about the Paseo experience, and with the building, it's quite a narrow passage, and that Paseo between the parking garage and this building, and with an even further heightened structure that takes the project a little bit out of scale in relation to its neighboring projects, I would be further concerned about that experience. Commissioner Camerado?
I agree with my fellow commissioners, so I have nothing to add.
All right then. Do we have any other comments, or would anyone like to make a motion?
Can I say something, please? This is Stephanie Gildred.
Let's see. Did I? Oh, I guess I didn't close the public hearing yet. So yes, please go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I know you're talking about, you know, quote unquote project, but I do want you to know this is my home. This is where I'm going to live. And just please keep that in mind instead of, you know, just always referring to the project. I do consider this my home.
Thank you. All right. Are there any other comments from the public? If not, I will close the public hearing. And are there any further comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Toronis?
Yeah, no comments, but well, I do want to see the project work. I think it's a good project, as we've talked about before. I think the context that it's in relative to what else is happening in this area and the incentives that we put in place in this area are good. I think we just have to consider the particulars of this property, this lot, relative to the adjacencies. So, you know, I think that there's a solution here. I just don't think what's being presented before us is approvable. So I'm going to make a motion to deny without prejudice so that the applicant can come back before us with some revisions.
And can I have a second? Commissioner Camerado, would you like to second that motion? I think you might be muted. Or Commissioner Loftus? Or Sergeant?
I will second it. I've been trying to unmute.
Yeah, I was stuck. Okay.
Okay, we'll take Commissioner Camerado then, since she was next. Thank you. So we have a motion by Commissioner Toronis, seconded by Commissioner Camerado. Is there any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Sargent, would you like to comment on the motion?
No, no, thanks.
All right. Then may we please have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Toronis,
Aye.
and Chair Say.
Aye. The motion passes 7-0-0-0. An action by the Planning Commission is appealable to the City Council within 10 days of the Planning Commission's action. If the Planning Commission's action has not been appealed or called up for review by the City Council by 5 p.m. on the 10th day, the action becomes final. In order to be effective, appeals must be in writing and must be accompanied by an appeal fee of $1,075, which includes noticing costs. So thank you. We move on now to design review study items. Agenda item 9A, 1151 Rosedale Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we please have a staff report?
This is an application for design review for a first and second story addition to an existing single-family dwelling and special permit for a new attached garage at 1151 Rosedale Avenue, zoned R1. The applicant is proposing a major renovation on the first floor, expanding the existing one-car attached garage to a two-car attached garage, and building a new second story. With this project, the house would increase from 1,232 square feet to 2,690 square feet, where that is also the maximum allowed on this lot. The number of bedrooms is increasing from 2 to 4. 2 parking spaces, one of which must be covered, are required on site. The applicant is requesting a special permit for expansion of the existing attached garage, which would provide 2 covered parking spaces. 1 uncovered space is provided in the driveway. That concludes a summary of my staff report. I'm here for any questions you might have for staff, and I believe the applicant is also available.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Will the applicant please step forward and state your name and add anything you would like about your project? Is the applicant present this evening?
Hello, I'm Sapphire. This is my project.
Great, we can hear you. Please proceed.
No other comments.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward build, right?
All right. Are there any questions for the applicant from the commissioners? Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, so this may just be a drafting error, but on your front elevation, your 2 living room windows, you're replacing all the windows, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
So those 2 living room windows on the front elevation, on the Rosedale Avenue elevation, those show it as existing. Will those be replaced as well?
Oh, actually, I don't think we're moving that corner right there. That corner is staying there. The windows, the 2 windows in the front left, right there.
Right.
The one on the right is changing. Yes.
Yeah, but the indication on your drawing is that every other window in the house is being replaced. Is that correct? Oh, except for the one. Yeah, the 2 on the 3, I guess, on the corner there. Those would stay.
Well, they're gonna. I'm not understanding your question.
Okay, are you replacing all the windows in the house?
Yeah, pretty much. Yes.
Pretty much, or yes?
Yeah.
Okay, so those ones that show existing will be new windows.
Yes.
Okay, and do you know what type of window you're going to use?
We haven't picked that out yet. We haven't gotten that far down the line. But
Okay.
we'll pick whatever we need to pick to make it right.
Okay, because we typically require a simulated true divided light wood clad window, which planning staff can help you with that. But
okay.
A couple other questions. So on that same on the Westmore elevation, are you intending to just stucco the chimney, or would you consider extending the bricks up?
We could just extend the bricks up, or we could stucco it too. Well, it'll probably look better stuccoed, right?
Well, I think it would show better as brick. My point is that you're on a corner lot, so you have really 2 fronts of the building. I think if you stuccoed it, it's going to wash it out. But so I think you need to work on some of the detailing, and that would help. And again, same thing with the windows. If you could show some kind of a detail around the windows, that would help us to understand what's going to happen there. Maybe, if there's going to be a wood trim around it or whatever.
Okay.
Okay. And then the same comment on that Westmore side, you've got a louvered vent up at the top of the upper gable. Have you thought about one that follows the line of the roof, a triangulated one, or something a little bit more architectural?
My architect's not on here, huh?
No, I mean, just a different type of vent. It looks like it's just plunked on there.
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
One second.
You can get a vent that would fit under the eave and look a little bit more custom. Again, I'm trying to work towards dressing up that Westmore elevation. It looks like the side of a house, but in fact, it's a street view that people will see head on.
Yes.
And then
correct.
those details could follow all the way around the house.
Okay.
But those are the only spots where I'm looking at that.
So what were you saying? We have to do a brick, the brick on the outside of that fireplace there, or
I think it looks more of a house. I'm not trying to direct you. But in the past, I prefer to see a house that doesn't wash out with all stucco, but it has different elements with different materials. And it's already a brick fireplace. I think it would look better if that brick was extended up.
Yeah, we could keep it a brick fireplace. This is Warren Huey. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
This is my architect. He can answer more questions. Okay.
I was trying to get, the first time I'm using Zoom, so I'm trying to get it on.
Welcome to the world of Zoom.
Yeah, those are my only questions.
Okay. Warren, did you want to address any of the other questions that were brought up prior?
No, I think I'm good. Yeah, we can use the windows. We can make the wood clad windows. That's fine. I don't think that's a problem. There's no real trim on the windows present as it is now. So that's why I kept the trims off the window. I try to keep it looking almost exactly like it was as it is now. So you want me to put trim on it?
Well, that's my question. You can, I'm open this to other commissioners as well, but I think that it could use a little bit more architectural detail, a little more dressing up.
Okay.
So that's why I'm asking about some wood trim. But that's up to you.
That's fine. I'll leave that up to the owner. If they want me to do it, I'll do it.
All right, Commissioner Toronis.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Warren, I don't know if this is a question for you or the owners. Looks like the existing first floor plate height, are you raising it? Looks like it right now measures 8 feet and change. Are you raising the whole first floor top plate to the 9 foot 0 3/4?
Yes.
Okay, and then you've got 9 foot 0 3/4 on the second floor as well.
Yes.
Okay, are you vaulting the second floor ceilings at this point, do you know, or have you gotten to that level of detail?
No, it's a flat ceiling.
Okay. On the front elevation, you're showing the double hung windows in order to get your egress requirements. And, one of the things that helps with the second floor to give it better scale relative to the first floor sometimes is that if the windows are a little bit smaller and have a little bit better scale to them relative to the first floor, so you've got other locations where you've got casement windows. Is there any reason why those have to be double hung? In other words, if you switch them to casements, you could make them smaller and then still meet your egress requirements, or are you really locked into the double hung?
I try to keep the street side, like on Rosedale, the same kind of windows when you're looking at it.
I see.
And then when you turn the corner, those is for vents, for light and ventilation on Westmore side. That's why I kept that. Use that casement on that side.
Okay, well, there's just like I said, there's just the issue of scale that we're trying to help you with, just in terms of making this approvable. My other question is on the front porch columns, they're kind of narrow and you have them noted as new stucco finish columns. So would they really be narrow like that with a stucco finish, or would those be a turned wood or something for those new front porch columns?
Right now, I have it 8x8 with stucco finish over it.
Okay. Once that gets dressed out, if it's an 8x8, if these drawings are to scale, and I assume they are, that those are going to have a little bit more prominence to them. But you're saying you're detailing those with both a stucco base and the stucco main shaft of the column? It would be all a stucco finish?
Yes.
Okay. you've got the plate height for that porch. If you look at it and you look at how much freeboard there is, just on that front plate of the porch, is there any reason why that has to be up at that 9-foot height as well? Or could that front plate of that porch height be brought down a little bit to give it a little bit better human scale?
I could bring it down a little bit.
Okay. Well, it might be something that we ask you to look at. So, okay. All right. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Are there, Commissioner Camerado?
Yeah, so I agree with most of Commissioner Torres's thoughts, but my primary thought was bringing the scale down on that second floor. It just doesn't feel quite right there. And I'd love to see more detail on the Westmore side for sure. So I was just wondering, if we could kind of try to create some of that.
All right.
Yeah.
Are there any other? Warren, were you trying to say something?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Are there any members of the public wanting to speak on this project? Do we have any emails?
Yes, we do have one email that was submitted by the next door neighbor at 1561 Westmore. So let me read that into the record. This is from Gunnar and Faye at 1561 Westmore Road. Good afternoon. We've received the public hearing notice regarding our neighbor adding a second floor on their existing house. We've reviewed their plan and am a little bit concerned for their rear side plan design. It looks like they have a new upstairs windows and doors, as well as adding one door downstairs. We weren't sure if the upstairs and downstairs windows and doors are directly or very close to our living room windows. If so, is it possible that the downstairs door can be changed to the left side and upstairs windows and door can be moved a little bit to the front? Because there is a very small space between both houses. The plans for the rear downstairs door right now, we feel like their house is extended to the outside. Please kindly give us some advice. We really appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you so much. Gunnar and Faye. And we have no chats for this project.
Okay, thank you. Warren, did you have anything to add or in response to that letter or email?
Yeah. Today was the first time I heard that she said anything. We can move the door, sliding glass door in the downstairs over a little bit.
Hi. Okay. So right now in the back of our house, we already have existing windows where, close or, in the same vicinity or maybe a few feet away. So in the back of the house, in the existing plans right now, if you see it, the bathroom has a window, the bedroom has a window, the other side bedroom also has a window. So, and we also have a 88-inch fence that's existing there already. So I'm not sure what the problem is there because we already have existing windows on the whole side of the house already right now as it is.
Okay, so maybe we suggest that you work with your neighbor after this meeting to discuss this matter further between the two of you and see if you can come up with a resolution amongst yourselves. Are there any other? It looks like we don't.
I was talking to her today, and she pretty much doesn't want any windows at all back there when we already have existing windows there. I mean, how would that work? She's saying, "Oh, I don't want to look into your house, and I don't want you looking into my house, right?" But we already have existing windows there, so I'm not sure what the problem is there.
I believe she was also commenting about the second story windows. So there may be some issues there that you can discuss with them.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, thank you. So seeing no other public comments, I will now close the public hearing. Commissioners, any comments? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, so whenever the tenor of our conversations, of our question period takes on the shape that it just took on, where we're trying to draw out design from the designer and trying to lead them places, it immediately I feel like this is a good candidate for design review consultant. And I realize that this neighborhood's not a neighborhood where the houses have a lot of detail, but this project feels like it's been drawn but not really designed. It doesn't feel really well thought out as a design. It feels highly functional, and I can't even be sure of that, but it feels like it needs some love and care. And I think the design review consultant could get the applicant and the designer there faster than we could by doing this. And so I would move that we refer this project to a design review consultant.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Loftus, seconded by Commissioner Torrones. Would any commissioners like to discuss this motion? Commissioner Schmidt?
No, actually, I think by moving to the design consultant, we're making the right decision. It does need some design help so that it will fit in nicely and add value to the neighborhood and not just keep retaining the old details that are there.
Commissioner Torrones, did you have further comments on the motion?
Yeah, yes, please. I wanted to give some assistance to, the issues that we're looking at for the design review consultant. I think beyond just the detailing, there are some specifics that should be reconsidered. One being the second floor plate height, that 9-foot plate height on the first floor and then a 9-foot plate height on the second floor is giving a lot of mass and making the whole project look overly tall. I think it also suffers from the fact that the building doesn't have much of an overhang to it in terms of the roofing. So therefore, you get sort of a high brow above the windows, particularly on the second floor as well as the first floor, with that raised plate height. And so since that roof is going to get rebuilt, if they're raising the whole plate height on the first floor, it's all new roofing. I think they could reconsider the overhangs, which I think would help with the design substantially. I think they could reconsider the scale of the windows on that second floor, again, to give some hierarchy to first and second floor. I think they could reconsider the detailing of the front porch for its plate height out at that front edge, as well as the detailing of the columns, perhaps introducing some wood. So that's, as Commissioner Gall mentioned, there's some different materials across the facade. I think they could reconsider the garage door. Right now, the existing one has what probably originally were windows into that garage door. Looks like they've been painted over or replaced, but you could get some windows into that garage door and give it some more character, since we are being asked to consider a larger attached garage. So just some areas to consider and think about when this goes to the design review consultant. Thank you.
I will add to that, unless I missed hearing Commissioner Torrones mentioning the cladding on the fireplace and chimney, not the fireplace, but the chimney, as well. Consider some locations for exterior lighting. That would be a nice consideration as well for the exterior elevations, the front and the rear. Okay, so if there is no further discussion on this motion, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 7-0-0-0. This action is not appealable. We now move on to agenda item 9B, 1321 DeSoto Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the site. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, this is an application for a design review and special permit for height for a new 2-story single-family dwelling and detached garage at 1321 DeSoto Avenue, zoned R1. The site on DeSoto Avenue consists of two legally subdivided lots, lots 19 and 20. Lot 19 is located on the right side with an address of 1327 DeSoto Avenue. Lot 20, or new address 1321 DeSoto Avenue, is used mainly as a yard for the site next door at 1327 DeSoto. The applicant proposes construction of a new two-story single-family dwelling and detached garage on the site. The total proposed floor area would be 3,405 square feet, where 3,418 square feet is the maximum allowed. A total of 2 parking spaces is required for the 4-bedroom house, one of which must be covered. A detached 2-car garage is proposed at the rear right side of the property and provides the covered parking for the project. Uncovered parking is provided in the driveway. The applicant is requesting a special permit for a proposed building height between 30 and 36 feet. The height of the highest roof ridge on the proposed house is 35 feet 7 inches, measured from average top of curb elevation. The lot does slope upward approximately 13 feet from the front to the rear of the site. And as proposed, there is a difference of 10 feet 11 inches between the average top of curb elevation and the finished floor of the house. That concludes my summary of the staff report. I'm here for questions, but this applicant is also here.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Seeing none, I will now open the public hearing. Will the applicant please step forward, state your name, and add anything that you would like regarding this project?
Hi, everyone. James Chu, Chu Design Associates. I'd like to thank Ruben for the very thorough staff report. There's nothing to add to this very straightforward project. Really just like to answer any question you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant from the commission? Commissioner Toronis?
Yeah, thank you. Hey, so James, looking at the special permit, so first of all, how is this a modern farmhouse? You there?
Well, yeah, I'm here. What was speaking of special permit?
Yeah,
it is very clear. It's very typical.
yeah.
I mean, the difference in elevation between the finished floor to average top of curve is more than 10 feet.
Right. Yeah.
So that's given, and that's why you guys created the special permit. So I
get it. I get it, James. I was just giving you a hard time about this being called a modern farmhouse, but setting that aside, it's a handsome design. But okay, but my specific question on the special permit, if you could just readdress question 4, because you are removing trees, but the question asked for what mitigation. So if you could just, did you do the landscape, or did Michael do it on this one? Or
with assistance of Michael.
Okay, if you could just address that question 4, the mitigation, how many trees are being added, to mitigate the removal of trees? So if you could readdress that in the special permit.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, it looks like we may have some members of the public who would like to speak on this item. Alex Flagg.
Hi, I live in 1322, right across the street, and I am concerned about the height, the special height request. A lot of these buildings across the street will block out the sun, and if this is even taller than the normal height, the standard height across, then it will, especially tower over, my house in particular, as well as my neighbor's house, who's also on the call here. So I do have a question about, why we need to grant a special height permit. I think it's reasonable to expect that the height can be close to the ones that are already across the street, but I don't think it's reasonable to grant a special height permit for this one. There also will be removal of trees there. So, I wanted to ask about what the permits are that are being granted for that.
Do you want to ask those questions now of the applicant about the?
No, just have you applied for the permit to remove the trees? And you know, I believe that there's a removal of an oak tree in the back, which is, if it's the very large one, that would, you know, be a significant impact on the neighborhood. The one in the front is probably okay.
James, would you like to
Yeah,
respond?
well, yes, what the tree will remove, there were a couple of reasons that we that we removed the tree. First of all, to create that driveway on the right, and also due to the fact that some of the trees are unhealthy per Albert's report, and so that's why we are removing. But we are willing to plant back, you know, trees that will fit in better on this property. And as far as for special permit, again, you know, the lot slopes up 13 feet in difference in elevation. And special permit is that, I mean, the purpose of a special permit is created is just for this reason. If you remove that 13 feet difference in height, I mean, in elevation, our overall building height is only 25 feet. And being across the street, we have, you know, 50 feet right of way plus additional approximately maybe 30 to 40 feet combined. We're talking about 90 feet difference in between our building and the building across the street. I mean, to say blocking the sunlight, I think that's unreasonable.
So how do you happen to know how high the other two houses next to your proposal are, and how high will it be higher than those houses?
Not off my head, but it should be called out on the survey.
Okay.
And I will probably respond your comment next go around, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Mark Hammett, did you want to speak?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm live next door to Alex. I'm right across the street from 1327, which is the Klimo's old place, and it was I think that was built in probably 1928, probably about the same year that our house was. And it's the Cleo's house is really quite massive. I mean, I don't know how big it is. It was that its size always seemed to be mitigated by the green space next door, which, you know, they had this double lot with a lot of trees, a rose garden, and stuff like that. I am concerned about the height. You know, I guess a variance of like 7 feet on the height, just because of I would hate to see this block of structures all the way across. I don't think, Alex, sorry, I won't direct it at him, but I don't think, contrary to my neighbor, I don't think is as high as the Klimo's house, or maybe even the one next to it. It does seem like a large house if you look at the, you know, total volume going all the way back. And it concerns me that there's just going to be, we're replacing this green space with this pretty big block of house. That's will effectively, from Alex and my perspective, these houses are kind of looming down on us, you know, from this hill that goes up about, you know, 10 feet or so. And I just am trying to avoid that kind of claustrophobia. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Do we have any emails?
We have no emails and no chat submitted.
All right. With that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners? Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, thank you, James. I think it's a nice project. I like the scale of it. I do agree that with the 10-foot change in height from the face of top of curb, I think that a 25-foot high project is very doable there. Looking at the two adjacent houses, they are actually a lot more than that. I think it would be a good idea for the next submittal to maybe dash in those heights of those adjacent houses so that it is clear that where you are and where you stand to that. But
Yes, we will. Thank you.
I think it's an excellent project, and I'd like to see it go forward.
Commissioner Torrones?
Thank you. Yes, I agree with Commissioner Schmidt. We have an application that is relatively typical plate heights, 9 feet on the first floor, 8'1" on the second. We have a roof pitch that's relatively low sloped at 5 and 12. So with an overall height of a house of about 25 feet, that's about as low as you can get relative to adjacent grade. They're keeping the house close to the grade at the back, just stepping out onto the adjacent finished grade the way it stands. So again, the special permit and consideration for height is strictly due to the fact that we, the city, consider height from relative to the average top of curb at the front of the property. And so it automatically is skewed when you have situations like this with upsloping lots. So I agree with Commissioner Smith. It's a nicely designed, well-detailed project. I think it should move forward.
Commissioner Camerado?
I think this is a great project. It's lovely. I think it'll add value to that street. And I think James, you did a great job. And I agree with my fellow commissioners.
Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I would agree with the comments, and I think that the height is, is appropriate for a two-story house, as Commissioner Torrones said. If the applicant could put those ridge heights on the neighboring house, I think that would help put it into context with what's there. I move we bring this back on the consent calendar.
I'll second that motion. So we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by myself, Commissioner Say. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, may we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Camerado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. The motion passes 7-0-0-0. This action is not appealable. We will now move on to agenda item 9C, 3 Cananea Place.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the project site. May we have a staff report, please?
This is an application for design review and hillside area construction permit for a new deck and addition on the main level along the left side and rear of an existing single-family dwelling at 3 Cananea Place, zoned R1. Given the slopes on this lot, the house is 1 story at street level on the left side and 2 stories on the right side. The applicant is proposing to remove the rear deck and expand the main level along the left side and at the rear, and also construct a new deck. Because of the slope of the lot, this main level and portions of the new deck are more than 6 feet above grade at the rear, and therefore are considered a second-story addition. The proposed project would increase the total floor area to 3,742 square feet, where 3,752 square feet is the maximum allowed. With this application, the number of bedrooms would increase to 6. 3 off-street parking spaces, 2 of which must be covered, are required for the project. There is some work being done to the existing attached garage, which would be remodeled and would maintain 2 code-compliant covered parking spaces and uncovered spaces provided in the driveway. That concludes my summary of the staff report. I'm here for questions. The architect is also available to answer questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. Will the applicant please step forward, state your name, and add any comments that you would like about your project?
Yes, hello, this is Stan Panko. This is a very basic renovation of a one-story home, actually two-story per the Burlingame Code. And what we're doing here is replacing many of the finishes on the exterior, and the interior is being pretty much totally renovated. The left side of the home, which you see down here at the bottom of the elevation, is being added onto for a larger family room, kitchen, and a den. And the downstairs are being finished off from what was currently existing. So that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. I'm open for comments.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the windows that are your proposed windows that you're putting in? What's the nature of the windows? I can't really tell anything about them.
The windows are contemporary. They're vinyl windows, bronze, dark bronze, narrow style, minimum trim. And they're being replaced all throughout the house.
All right, and they're vinyl, not aluminum?
That's correct.
Okay, any other questions, Commissioner Loftus?
No, thanks.
Commissioner Toronis?
Sorry, I'm muted. Stan, as I'm sure you're aware, we have the hillside area permit, which primarily has to do with views. And in visiting the property, the only place that I could see potential impacts are the view, if you're facing the front, the view of the neighbor to the left. So have you had a chance to show the plans to that neighbor, and are they aware of what the addition that's pushing out to the back? Stan?
No, we have not.
Okay.
The actual rear has been pushed out. It's just there, the current living area, kitchen and dining, that's been pushed out.
Yeah, it's being pushed out, I don't know, it looks like 10 feet that you're pushing out, and then the deck is, obviously the deck isn't going to be much structure, but there is just that volume of the kitchen and dining that's pushing out back there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions, Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, just on the siding, you have 1x6 horizontal, 1x6 horizontal siding typical. What kind of siding is that?
That's going to be a hardy board. Currently, what's on there is fir, and it's pretty badly warped. So we're replacing that with something a little more stable.
Okay, but it'd be a 1x6?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions from members of the public? Comments? Do we have any emails?
No emails and no chats for this application.
All right. With that, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, comments? Commissioner Loftus?
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good project. It's pretty straightforward. It's sort of nicely a nice expansion of the one-story, apparent one-story. I am not real keen on the windows. I think the windows had gone from simple to oversimple. They're huge expanses of undivided glass, and they just feel out of place. They feel commercial as opposed to residential, in my view. And I think we would need some evidence that there's no view impact back there. Although no one stepped forward, it seems to me that the question is left unanswered. So I guess we have to decide what to do with that.
Well, the house on the left is a little higher. And I don't believe any of the views are being blocked.
Stan, we're having a hard time hearing you. Stan? Okay, I think we might have lost him for a second there.
Didn't we close the public hearing anyway, Madam Chair?
I'm sorry?
Didn't we close the public hearing anyway, Madam Chair? Or we
Now
still
you're
in the
back.
question?
I did. That's probably why Stan can't speak. Commissioner Taronis, sorry about that.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Loftus. You know, it's a relatively straightforward and simple design. My concern is relative to the hillside area permit and the view corridor or the view issues or potential view issues. And unfortunately, the only way to answer that is via story poles. And my concern would be, you know, we move forward, we don't require the story poles, and then the neighbor comes forward, you know, during an action hearing, and suddenly we're backpedaling and having to continue the project and get story poles installed. So I think it would behoove us to have at least an outline of the addition erected via story poles in order to move forward toward action.
Commissioner Schmidt?
I actually agree. You know, Commissioner Tronos brings up a good point that if we move this forward because nobody said anything, we run the risk of them saying it later and then making this take a lot longer. So I would agree that the story poles would help. I think that there are fewer windows and people overlooking this than some of the other ones that we've discussed lately. But I think it being thorough would be a good idea. I also would agree with my fellow commissioners with regards to the windows. They are big and there's not a lot of detail to them. It's a very simple design and it could benefit with a little bit of additional thought to the windows and or trims, because otherwise it's just going to be very simple siding. Thank you.
Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I would agree. I'm a little confused on the design style with the siding and those windows. And not only those front elevations, but then if you go over to the right elevation, it's just a lot, it seems like a lot of smaller windows just sort of randomly sprinkled around, and the left side elevation has virtually none. And that may be just a function of the interior rooms, but I think that those elevations should be looked at a little more closely, as well as the size of the windows on the front and rear elevations and how they mesh with the siding. I'm a little confused on that.
Yes, I agree. I agree with those comments about the windows. In particular, the right side elevation, it seems like every window type is being specified. And we have single hungs, we have casements, there are fixed windows and sliding. So maybe taking a look at the window types and sizes across the board. Commissioner Sargent?
Yeah, I would agree and reiterate about looking at some more window detailing either through the use of grids or trim or both. And also, as came up in I think during the question period, if they could also relook at the window material. I think they said it was going to be vinyl. And, you know, typically we look to match more traditional stock with a clad wood product. So if they could relook at that. I make a motion, we bring this back on the action calendar with the direction that they erect story poles for the addition.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Sargent, seconded by Commissioner Loftus. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, may we please have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones,
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. So the motion passes 7-0-0-0. This action is not appealable. Moving on to agenda item 9D, 120 Occidental Avenue. Were any commissioners not able to visit the project site, or do any commissioners wish to note any ex parte communications regarding this project? Seeing none, let the record note that all commissioners present have visited the site. May we have the staff report, please?
Sure, this is an application for design review for a major renovation and first and second story addition to an existing single-family dwelling and a new detached two-car garage at 120 Occidental Avenue, zoned R1. The proposed addition, including the new detached garage, would total 3,913 square feet, where 3,973 square feet is the maximum allowed. The existing house has a porte cochere off the right side of the front facade and extends across the driveway to the right side property line. The entire front wall, the first floor wall, porch, and porte cochere, and the right side wall of the porte cochere would remain with the proposed renovation and addition. With the proposed project, the number of bedrooms would increase from 3 to 4. A total of 2 on-site parking spaces are required, one of which must be covered. The proposed detached garage would provide 2 covered spaces, and therefore the project complies with off-street parking requirements. The project includes building a new detached ADU in the rear left corner of the lot. The ADU and new detached garage would be connected with the trellis in between the 2 structures. Review of the ADU application is administrative only and is not reviewed by the Planning Commission. Staff has determined that the ADU complies with the recently adopted ADU ordinance. That concludes a summary of my staff report. I'm here for questions. I believe the designer is also here for questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm going to open the public hearing. Would the applicant please come forward, state your name, and add any comments that you would like regarding your project?
Hi, good evening. It's Tim Redains from One Design. I'm going to get my notes here. Sorry about that. In the, putting together the design, we reached out to the neighbors, sent letters out. We are keeping the porte cochere, which myself and Greg, who's the owner, thinks is a very architectural piece that we'd like to preserve. And we've fought a little bit to keep it, going through the planning process, the preliminary planning process. We think we've done a good job. I'm here for your comments, and the 3D that's in front of you is pretty preliminary. I just wanted to, I kind of just gave it to Ruben today. So, the 2D drawings are definitely more accurate. So, but I at least wanted to give you a general overview of the 3D, so that we can hopefully go to the next meeting and get a good approval. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant, Commissioner Loftus?
Yes, is the new masonry materials that brick or stone? I don't see a note anywhere. Looks like
it's brick.
Okay.
It would be a clinker brick that Greg and I use quite a bit throughout Burlingame.
Is the scale? How big are the bricks? Am I just being fooled by the scale somehow?
I can, if Ruben, can you put the 2D on and
Hang on 1 second.
it might be a hair bigger, but it would just be a standard like 4x8 clinker brick.
Okay, so
I can make the scale. I can make the scale a little bit more in keeping. Yes.
Okay, that's why I asked the question about whether stone or brick. I wasn't sure what I was seeing because they're big, whatever they are. One other question: Did you consider? I like the fact you're keeping the porte cochere. Frankly, the downside.
Thank you.
The downside is that it makes the building all about the house. The house all about the car, since there's no apparent front door, and it's because that there's no, you walk up the driveway to get into the front door and up under the porte cochere. Did you consider taking out a bit of that wall there at the front and freeing up the porte cochere column to be able to walk into the house
we could do that 100%. I'm okay doing that. Greg and myself have talked about it a little bit. We also talked about opening up that existing kind of entryway where it's the ER window in the front and making that a larger window to kind of pinpoint where the entry is. But we can definitely take a look at removing that small little knee wall and creating a pathway to it. Correct.
So it sounds like you've had discussions about making the entry more clear yourself.
Correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Yes, on the porte cochere, it looks like with the new roof in the front.
Correct. We put a new dormer.
Right. So you're going to end up with a corner there. How are you planning to drain from there? Because it looks like it's just going to dump in your neighbor's house.
Well, let me get. Sorry about that. We will have to address that. What we'll probably end up doing is putting a diverter at the bottom and doing an internal downspout, and then probably go through the column and then back into the drainage system.
Okay.
And that's a pretty minimal amount of water going there, but yes, we'll have to deal with that. Correct.
It's just those corners are hard to work with, and so just
they are
before you get there. So I actually liked the 3D a little bit more than I liked the elevations.
Well, I know the elevation. That's why I threw it to Ruben just to make sure. It seemed a little bit less busy, I think, on the 3D than it did on the 2D. So good.
I would encourage you to finish your 3D and see how well you can make that work on the 2D so we can approve it. But I think your hatches are killing the look of this house on the elevation.
Yeah, I totally understand. We're probably going to we will change the roof hatch so it's easier to make so we can distinguish it. Correct.
Now, are you thinking you're still thinking the cedar shingles up on the top?
Yes, and that's Greg and myself normally do that on a lot of our houses. We would be possibly okay doing the horizontal and keeping it a little bit more clean, but this is a sellable project. The shingles usually add a bit of expense to it. A more expensive look. And Greg likes to do it, so I'm not gonna be against it. So.
And I don't necessarily disagree. I actually like the shingles as well. I guess, again, it kind of comes back to the hatch of these 2Ds. I'm struggling with the line work and really being able to see the richness of the forms. And I'm kind of
then look at the 3D.
I haven't received on the 3D yet. So, I'm struggling with how busy.
I will correct that on the next go around.
Okay.
I will take that under consideration for sure.
Thanks.
Commissioner Toronis?
Yeah, Tim, just one simple question. In terms of the window casing, Your sheet A5 has your typical window casing with the 2x6 head, the 5/4x4 vertical casing. Is that the actual casing that you'll use on these windows? Because it looks a lot simpler on the elevations.
Because it is. And I'm going to talk to Greg about it. We had talked about either using like a 3 3¼ inch or a little bit, basically the more larger brick mold that's very traditional. And that's what you show on, that's what I'm showing on the 2D. But yes, we have to, I'll coordinate that on the next go around with the detail. Is there a consensus on which one? I mean, I think they're both approvable, but I don't want to come back and say, I picked this, and then you guys say, we don't like it.
No, I mean, my sense is with the shingles that you have, and well, it's kind
my
of
opinion.
Hold on. With the brick cladding that you have on the first floor, yeah, a simple brick mold could work there. But with the shingles that you have on the second floor, I like your typical detail with the 2x6 head and the 5/4x4 verticals. But I'd leave it to you to pull it together. But
okay,
I think that with the shingles, a more substantial casing of some sort usually works better. But yeah, it's up to you. I just wanted to see consistency with the drawing.
I will make the details consistent on the next go around.
Commissioner Gall.
Yeah, just one question. What happened to the chimney? You get your fireplace coming up there on the left elevation and it stops at the eave. Why don't you poke it through the eave and make it look like a regular chimney?
It was mostly just cost savings, and you won't really see it because of the neighbor.
I mean, I suppose it's far enough back, but to me, it always looks kind of silly.
One thing we could do is maybe just side it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that with the brick at the base, it would look good if it was a brick chimney. You could even just put a shoulder on it and just have it narrow as it comes up and penetrates through the eave. And it doesn't have to poke up, to any of the codes. I'm sure it's going to be a Zerkler's fireplace. It would
exactly.
It would just look like it was a chimney if it came through the eave and terminated in the air.
Could we make it? I get where you're coming from, Commissioner. Can we bring it up halfway, and that wouldn't be objectionable?
Halfway.
Kind of right below those 2 awning windows that we show.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say it has. Yeah, halfway would be great. That would it would look like a chimney.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
I just think it always looks odd when it just stops under the eave.
That's because it does.
All right, thanks.
Yep. Okay.
All right, Commissioner Gall got to my question. That was my question as well. So that'll be a great solution. Are there any other comments from commissioners? I don't see any. So are there any public comments? Any emails?
No emails, no chats.
Okay.
And we did hand out letters to all the neighbors, and I did not get any correspondence back.
Great, thank you for doing that. So with that, I'll close the public hearing. Commissioners? Commissioner Loftus?
This is a really nice project. I like the way it's crafted. I think that Commissioner Smith was exactly right. The drawings, the 2-dimensional drawings, or the grids, or the hatch is just killing it. And as soon as you look at the 3D, it feels right. It feels properly scaled. It'll be a really nice addition to the neighborhood. I would like to see the front opened up, the front entry made more clear. I think it's sort of hidden back there, and but I think this feels like a consent project to me. So I would move we bring it back on the consent calendar after we hear other folks' opinions.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Loftus, seconded by Commissioner Toronis. Is there any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Gall?
Yeah, I would just, I'm in agreement with the motion. I would just like to see that, that rendering filled in a little bit more with the proper materials. I think that's going to be a key on this one.
All right. And with that, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Camarado,
Aye.
Commissioner Gall,
Aye.
Commissioner Loftus,
Aye.
Commissioner Sargent,
Aye.
Commissioner Schmid,
Aye.
Commissioner Torrones.
Aye.
Chair Say.
Aye. The motion passes 7-0-0-0, and this action is not appealable. Thank you. Moving on now to agenda item number 10, commissioners' reports. There are no commissioners' reports tonight, so we will move on to agenda item number 11, directors' reports. The commission communications. Directors are no. City council regular meetings except from.
Yeah, I don't have anything specific to report from the council meeting. There is one FYI item. It's information that you had requested for the project that was approved at 1 and 45 Adrian Court. Please let me know if you'd like to pull that. If not, we'll move forward.
Does anybody want to pull that? Looks like
it.
The answer is no. All right.
Great.
So
Pretty.
it is very pretty. And if there are no other comments, then I will then adjourn this meeting at 9:51 p.m.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Nice night.
Good night.
Night, everybody.
Night, everyone.
Night, guys.